Hi, this is Graeme back with another installment of my free Facebook e-class, Calorie Cycling for Rapid Fat Loss. And in today's lesson, we're really going to look at what happens to the human body under conditions of conventional dieting. Now, in the last lesson, we saw some of the failures of trying to produce weight loss from a strict calorie counting or calorie balancing approach. We saw strike one being that for different macronutrients, so between fats, proteins, carbohydrate, and alcohol, we actually have a different amount of energy required to digest and assimilate those nutrients. So just by going by total daily kind of calorie count, sometimes we can be off in our prediction with how much weight loss or weight gain someone will experience. Now, strike two, we saw that just because we know the calorie count of food going into someone's mouth, it doesn't automatically compute out to being the exact number of calories that reach someone's cells. And we saw that when we cooked certain foods, depending on the state, whether something is, blended up versus really hard and dense, it's going to take a different amount of energy for our body to actually break that down, and it can ultimately result in different amount of total calories being absorbed and available to the cells. That was strike two. Then in strike three, which was kind of the real nail in the coffin, we saw that on our labels, kind of the FDA agrees that up to 20% error, and often it's underestimated error, is appropriate for labels. So if we think we're getting 200 calories in something, we can actually be eating 240 calories. Okay, and so that really started computing out to a phenomenal amount of weight gain if we went with a strict calorie count based on labels. So we had those three strikes, and we decided, calorie counting is not an appropriate means to produce weight loss. So what is? Okay, and we're going to make a comparison, and we're going to do this in a research setting so we know exactly what's going on. And we're going to compare the standard Weight Watchers approach, so that's straight diet and a little bit of exercise advice. We're going to be, checking in with them every week. We're going to compare that to more a real life setting where, someone goes to the gym. This is a New Year's resolution type crowd. They're going to exercise 3, 4, 5 times a week, but they're not going to be supervised. And so we're going to see which approach actually produces a greater amount of weight loss. Okay, so we're going to grab our subjects. We're going to make sure they're over fat. So they're about 40% body fat, which means they have weight to give. So this is an ideal population to study for weight loss purposes. And again, our Weight Watchers group gets diet and exercise advice and weekly weigh-ins, as well as ongoing coaching over the 12 weeks. The Gold's Gym is just going to be given an exercise program and asked to do it on their own time. So after 12 weeks, what do we see? Well, if we look at the Gold's Gym, again, we're not supervising them, so we've just given them an exercise plan. And unsurprisingly, after 12 weeks, there's very little change in terms of total body weight. So again, even though they were exercising, they didn't produce much change. It's kind of depressing because they spent a lot of hours exercising for no real results, but that's how it goes. Now let's look at the Weight Watchers crowd. And this is encouraging. We see that for the Weight Watchers group, over the 12 weeks, they lost about 4 kilograms, which is about 9 pounds. So that's not phenomenal, but it's solid. I think many of us, if we could be told that we would lose 10 pounds in the next 3 months, we'd take it. But unfortunately, this group of researchers studied a second variable, and that second variable was body fat percentage. And let's look at what happens on that side of the equation. Well, again, because the Gold's Gym group actually didn't change their weight, unsurprising that they also didn't change their body fat percentage. But what's alarming is that the Weight Watchers group, despite losing 9 pounds on the scale, didn't change their body fat one bit. So let that sink in for a bit. Despite losing 9, almost 10 pounds, you don't change your body fat percentage. So what does this mean? Let's look at it. Under our two conventional approaches that most of us are going to adopt in order to try to produce some weight loss, we see that just exercising alone doesn't really do much in terms of either changing weight or body fat percentage. Well, what's kind of depressing is to see that under the conventional approach to dieting, so where we're managing calories and all that, people do lose weight. So you might go from 200 pounds to 180 pounds on a Weight Watchers style diet. Unfortunately, all that happens is you remain a smaller version of your previous self. So if you were 200 pounds and 40% body fat, doing Weight Watchers will take you down to 180 pounds and keep you at 40% body fat. This is not at all what we want. Just because the scale is changing, we're not actually improving our health unless we also change our body fat percentage, which means we've lost weight and either maintained or gained some muscle mass, which is a good thing, and conventional diets aren't making that happen. Okay, so let's look at exactly why this is the case. Okay, so despite people consuming fewer calories and exercising more, they actually don't change their body fat percentage under most diets. Okay, so let's look at it. And the reason why this happens is because our metabolism is far smarter than any conventional diet approach. And to illustrate this, let's look at a study that was done in chimpanzees. Now, chimpanzees are an excellent model for humans because we share about 97% of the same genetics. And chimpanzees will do things humans won't. So in this particular study, we're going to take a group of female chimpanzees and reduce their calories by 30%. So if you were a human consuming 2,000 calories a day, we're going to knock you down to about 1,350 calories, which is quite a chop in terms of total calories. Now you'd think going from 2,000 down to about 1,300, you'd see a phenomenal amount of weight loss. If we look here on the graph on the left, we see that despite reducing calories by 30%, there's no change in body weight. This is after a month. Now why is this the case? Because if we go over to the graph on the right, we're seeing, oh, these chimpanzees are spontaneously reducing their physical activity in response to a decrease in calories. So this happens in humans too. Whenever you cut calories out of your diet, your metabolism and just the level of physical activity you're going to perform naturally start to decrease. It's your body's way of staving off starvation. Now what happens if we really forced someone to eat far fewer calories than they used to? So maybe we'll cut their calories down to only 40% of what they really need. So we're going to reduce by 60%. Okay, well then we can get to a condition where we actually do produce some weight loss. But the sad reality is a human will not cut their calories by 60% for any length of time. You'd have to force them to do it. So in the real world, we see that kind of just decreasing calories as a means to lose weight isn't very effective. And this bears it out when we look at kind of the average success rate on conventional diets. Over 90% of people who go on a diet and lose some weight gain all that weight back, if not more, in the next 2 years. So we're seeing spectacular rates of failure with the conventional dieting approach. And that conventional dieting approach was one where we're doing that straight math, where we're looking at calories in, calories out, balance it out. We've been told that for years and years and years, but the reality is your metabolism is a lot like a relationship. It's complicated, and it's not a math issue. It's largely a biochemistry problem. Alright. So I guess we're at the point where we have to decide, do calories matter? And we've been told this for years, that calories are the most important thing for producing weight loss, but now we're starting to see some of these numbers and well, maybe that's not the case. So do we just throw calories out entirely? Well, not to beat a dead horse, but we can definitely say with 100% certainty that calorie counting for most people is not a very good strategy. It just doesn't work. At over 90% failure rates, not worth holding on to. But at the same time, calories do matter. Okay, I'm not going to suggest that you can eat whatever you want, even with the best foods in the world, and still lose weight, because it's not going to happen. So what do we need to appreciate? Well, just throwing some representative samples up here of what a 200 calorie serving of food looks like. And if we look at something like the apples or the broccoli, we see actually we eat a large volume of food in order to get those 200 calories, whereas we have some healthier foods, so things like nuts and meat, which are relatively calorie dense. We don't need to eat quite as much of those foods to get the same amount of calories, but they're pretty healthy. And then we see some relatively unhealthy choices, so things like the bagel, which doesn't take much bagel to give you 200 calories, or much cheese to get 200 calories either. So should we calorie count? Definitely not. But we do need to become calorie aware. So understanding within our diet where are concentrated sources of calories and where are ones that we get a large volume of food for very few calories. That's where we need to take this. But most importantly, we're actually trying to lose weight. Once we've understood caloric awareness and where the calories come from, again, I suggest that the calorie count still doesn't hold a lot of weight. And so we need to understand why. And the reason why most people struggle with weight loss, again, it's not mathematical, it's biochemical. And when we're talking biochemical, we really need to start looking into the hormonal system. And this is just a little teaser of some of the things we're going to learn and look at in lesson 4. And so that's it for today's lesson. And just a reminder, if you liked this lesson and you haven't already done so, I strongly recommend you join the Facebook group Calorie Cycling for Rapid Fat Loss, as well as checking out my blog, which is located at Graeme Thomas Online. We go through a lot of science, a lot of practical solutions for people who are looking for weight loss. That's it for today's lesson, and I'll see you next time.